On Sunday, Inbee Park made 8 birdies in a 10-hole stretch to win the HSBC Women's Champions for the second time in her career. She was, in fact, the only person to have won that event twice in her career, I should say. And today, she will be joining us live to react. Yes, we will have Inbee Park on the show. It is Tuesday, March 7th. Carl Robinson, alongside our Golf Channel Academy lead coach Travis Fulton. Not only Inbee Park will we be talking about today, we'll also be getting into Charles Schwartzel. He is the defending champion at the Valspar Championship. You've got a feature called Swing Shots, right?
I do. Swing Snaps.
Oh, Swing Snaps.
That's right. And we're going to take a look at Charles Schwartzel and our team here at Golf Channel. I mean, Manny and the team put together a really cool graphics called Swing Snaps. We're going to take a really in-depth look at his swing. It's kind of effortless, right? It's almost a little Louis Oosthuizen, and I want to show you some things that you can learn from him.
He might hit it a little bit farther than you would expect, right? We're going to look into that in a little bit more detail. But for now, let's say good morning to Lauren Thompson and find out what is trending this Tuesday.
Good morning, Cara, Travis, the rest of you at home. We also have more members in studio, AP, and yes, big-time guests coming your way. But looking at what's trending, let's start things off with a dose of what happened last night. The series premiere of Faraday with the one and only Phil Mickelson. It was part 1 of 2 and has us and the viewers like yourselves glued. As a 5-time major champion, World Golf Hall of Famer with, yes, that famous left-handed swing, opened up on his career, his personal life, and why he's not even close to slowing down. And you saw this in Mexico City just last weekend. He was contending, but you've also seen it in his multiple team appearances, which of course came up last night.
Played on the last 22 Ryder Cup and President Cups teams, but was this last September, was that maybe your finest moment?
It was the best. That was the best week. The way the guys played, the way we were prepared and ready to come out. But I'll tell you what the greatest thing about that Ryder Cup was. It was at a time when we had the DNC and the RNC were trying to elect a president, and there's a lot of animosity. But at Hazeltine that day, there were 70,000 people that all were just Americans.
Right.
And they were high-fiving, and they were hugging, and they were cheering on the players. And to see that type of unity and to be a part of that, to be in the center of that, was really a special feeling. That was one of the greatest things, and I'm hopeful that going forward, Ryder Cups are able to create that type of coming together. This one was important because we had a lot of planning, we had a lot of preparation, and we put the players in a position to succeed, and we ultimately came through and played well, and it was really fun to be a part of that because we feel like it's almost the turning point for the U.S. on the Ryder Cup team.
Well, the next time up, you'll be, what, 47?
I'm 46 right now, so by the time that comes around, I'll be had just turned 48.
48? Wow. And say, for instance, you don't make that team. Would you accept a position?
Well, I'll end up making the one in 2 years. I'll end up making that one. I'll end up making the one at Whistling Straits in 50, and then I'm not sure what'll happen after that. We'll see, but. Yeah, I'm not, that's thought of not, it hasn't even entered my mind. I'll definitely be on those 2 teams.
Well, for the last 22 years, no one's been able to knock you out of it?
Right, so why would it start now?
Have to love that confidence, don't you? A lefty, he's no stranger to the Ryder Cup with 11 total appearances, the most all-time for the United States team. He's played a total of 45 matches, also a U.S. team record, earning 21.5 points from 18 wins and 7 halved matches. A veteran of the U.S. team as we welcome in Damon Hack and also PGA Tour winner Robert Dameron. Guys, he's not done yet.
Good morning, LT. I tell you, it doesn't look like he's done, Robert. You know, so fun watching last night. Listen, Phil Mickelson, we saw what he did at Hazeltine. He shot 63 in his last Open Championship. He shot 68 in Mexico, where hitting a fairway was just a notion to him. What do you think about his Ryder Cup future?
I think he meant what he said. There's one aspect you say, well, is that a little sports psychology mumbo jumbo? Is any athlete that's still competing is never going to say, well, boy, I just don't have it. I'm not going to make, I hope to make it. No, they're going to act that way. But Phil meant it. There's none of that. He just said it as a matter of fact. What do you mean? I'm going to make the Ryder Cup, and I'm going to play well, and I'll make it again when I'm 50.
What kind of 15th club is that to have that strong of belief? It's a certainty to him. He was almost offended by the question.
A little bit, but I think that when you walk out of your house in the morning and you walk past 42 PGA Tour trophies, it's pretty easy to draw confidence from that and have it legit confidence, not just faking it.
What was it like for you to be inside the ropes with him, to play along someone so confident who believed that no matter where he hit his tee shot, that par and birdie were still possibilities?
He knew he was almost a Seve throwback. I mean, it didn't bother him. It didn't faze him when he missed a fairway. He just went on like, hey, yeah, I'll take care of this. Almost the same way he treated that Ryder Cup segment. What do you mean? I'm in the rough. So what? There's trees in front of me. So what? Watch this.
The oldest player ever to play in a Ryder Cup, Raymond Floyd, a captain picked back in 1993, went 3-1. Do you believe Phil Mickelson will be on the U.S. Ryder Cup team at age 50?
I fully believe that he will.
You do?
I've got to say, 50's pretty old in today's game. Let's face it. He's still Phil Mickelson.
Yeah.
He's still so good. In his Ryder Cup showing last year, the match against Sergio was maybe one of the best matches ever.
Yeah.
10 birdies he made and tie. And, you know, that match didn't really mean a lot to the Ryder Cup itself. It was almost a foregone conclusion, but he didn't care.
Yeah.
Sergio didn't care. They just were staring at each other, going at it. I'm not going to let you win.
Yeah.
And it was just
Probably
great
meant a lot
match.
to each of them in terms of their own confidence in their future. Listen, there was an old ad campaign called What Will Phil Do Next? I want to know what Phil's going to say next to David Feherty. We'll all find out next Monday, 9 p.m. in part 2 of Feherty on Golf Channel. LT, back to you.
Well, you know you'll be hanging on to every single word, that's for sure. Moving on to our second story, and this week in Palm Harbor, Florida, the Copperhead course at Innisbrook Resort and Golf Club, and a defending champion in Charles Schwartzel. Last year, he took down Bill Haas on the first playoff hole to get PGA Tour title number 2. His first was the Masters, if you remember that, and now he is back for the 17th playing of the event and one of the toughest closing stretches in golf. As we get you back to Cara Robinson and Travis Fulton, you got to have a solid swing to tame the snake pit, don't you?
A solid and effortless, maybe, Lauren, as we dive into these swing snaps now with Travis Fulton. Looking at Charles Schwartzel's driving statistics, which you did yesterday, you were a little bit surprised, weren't you? He hits it a bit longer than you expected, yet he looks so simple. How does he get so much out of his swing?
Well, let's have some fun here. This is swing snaps. I'm in heaven here, Cara.
You love this, don't you?
This is unbelievable. But, you know, there's two things that come to my mind when I look at Charles. One is he's a high ball hitter. He likes to throw the ball way up in the air. And secondly, as you alluded to, he's got good power, right? I mean, he's 5'11", 160 pounds. He hits it up there around 295 off the tee. So look at this here. Where does the power come from first in the windup? Well, when I look at this, the first thing that jumps out to me here is the right hip. Notice how the right hip is higher than the left, right? And of course, the right shoulder is higher than the left. When I look at Charles, he's a player, to me, that really kind of recruits and really gets loaded deep down into the right heel. And that's what that tells me, with that right hip much higher than the left. The height comes from a lot here, Cara, in the left wrist. He's kind of a cupped left wrist player. He keeps that left wrist cupped here at halfway back. And then you can see up here at the top, the left wrist is still a little cupped. So it's very much here at this position, the shaft in line with the forearm, and then he gets it underneath the thumb at the top of the swing. We'll see a lot of players flat or bowed, but with Charles, the left wrist is cupped and the club face is a little maybe open at the top from time to time.
This is a very clever sequence, and this is really just the coil up into loading up on his backswing.
That's right. Yeah, he's loading up. He's playing the club beautifully. He's got the club face in a nice position at the top. You know, I've heard Charles talk about how he feels like he plays perhaps some of his best golf when the club face is a little bit more rotated at the top, which is a little unusual. We'll see a lot of players square, maybe even a little close as that left wrist position.
This is what I was hoping for. I knew you'd have more for me.
All right, here we go. Now we're going to come down, right? So where's the power coming from? When I look at Charles, he's deep loaded into the right hip, and now he uses that very much in the rotational phase. If you look at the right foot goes early to the toe. So his foot goes quickly kind of this way. We'll see a lot of players that maybe roll through the instep.
Right.
When I see the foot go early to the toe like this, that's telling me he's getting a lot really in recruiting in the rotational phase of the hips. We can get power laterally. We can get power rotationally. And Charles is a player that gets loaded deep into the right hip, and then from there is quickly to rotate and come up off that right toe. Now, again, the height, and this is what's interesting to me, is he carries that left wrist condition, which was cupped at the top, and he's carrying it down halfway. That left wrist didn't go from cupped to flat in that early stage, but that left wrist is staying cupped, and now it's starting to flatten out here. And then, of course, eventually, as it gets into impact, that left wrist will eventually work to a flat position. But that left wrist position really is where a lot of the height comes from. And then, of course, as I mentioned, the rotational phase is where the power is coming from.
And we have got his finish to look at as well. This is a perfect way to really try and emulate a Tour Pro, because you can see every ounce of their footwork, their body work, their swing through each portion of the movement. So if you look at how he finishes.
Yeah, it is really cool, these swing snaps. And again, the right foot you can see up onto the toe. Eventually it makes it all the way where we can see the cleats here at the end. But what I find interesting, with Charles is really the release and how the left wrist works to there. So I talked about how the left wrist was cupped at the top, and then as it comes down, he kind of carries it cupped, and then it starts to work to flat. And then from there, he really just lets it go this way. You'll see some players who are flat coming down, they'll turn the knuckles down, and they'll carry this inline relationship through the strike like a Jordan Spieth. But with Charles, he really takes it and he just lets it go. Okay, so for me, the loft of the shot, the power all kind of comes together in the release pattern for Charles, where he just takes it and he just lets it go this way. Very similar to throwing a Frisbee, where you kind of hear and then you just let it go like that. And that's the release pattern for Charles Schwartzel.
Maybe a bit of Frisbee training to help your golf swing, huh?
It's really actually a good drill, and one that would emulate this movement and allow for adequate power.
And you're giving credit to the European Tour for this, aren't you? They posted something similar with Rory, and you were like, that's cool, I need to give it a go.
I'm a big fan of the European Tour and their social media. They do great work.
Swing snaps, we're going to have more of it when Travis Fulton's in studio. That was his first win since becoming a Masters champion in 2011. His first win since in America, as we send it back to Lauren.
Thank you, Cara. Well, we now continue to the news we broke last week alongside the USGA and the RNA. 30 proposed rules revisions that will continue to take you further inside on a daily basis here on Morning Drive. So here's a recap on why the idea of touching or moving loose impediments or even touching the ground in penalty areas could officially be okay come 2019. This is something that your input and everyone else's is very important, as the players themselves have not been shy on their opinions.
Grounding the club in red marked areas of hazards, I feel like that can get kind of takes away from the point of it being a hazard. A hazard's not supposed to be treated the same as the rest of the surface around the green.
The one where you can remove loose impediments or ground your club in a hazard is one that it's a little interesting, because normally if you hit it into a hazard, you don't necessarily deserve to kind of not create a good lie, but move stuff around that maybe make the position a bit better. So that one's a little confusing. But other than that, I think it's pretty cool.
Touching or moving loose impediments in a penalty area, it was verboten as long as man has been walking the earth, Robert. What are your thoughts on this?
I'm 50-50 on this one. I like the aspect of being able to ground your club. I think if you're in a water hazard and you ground your club in the water, are you really testing the surface? Guess what? It's water, it's wet.
You already know that.
You already know that. And you pull your club out, it goes back. You haven't improved your lie any. So I'm cool with that. The other part about moving loose impediments, though, I like the new rules changes where they speed up play. This doesn't speed up play. Also, it seems to take a little of a bite out of hitting it into this penalty area, whereas I can improve my lie and my stance and all this and move these loose impediments. I don't like that. That slows it down and takes a little of the penalty out of hitting it into a penalty area.
We heard from Jordan Spieth. We heard from Brandt Snedeker. Do you think this proposed rule affects the amateur more or the professional more?
I think it affects the professional more. I think one thing that the USGA said, it was in this rule, and a reason for it, we don't want the televised opinion coming in. I mean, they worded it differently, but that's part of it. So years ago, many years ago, when we were both very young men in diapers, Paul Azinger moved a loose impediment with his foot. Watch this. He's in the hazard. Oh, he moved a couple of those rocks with his foot. That's a big no-no. And you know what? I think it should be a penalty. Here's the issue. USGA said, we don't want a televised rule. We don't want people to call in and say anything. And let's face it, what other sport could we call in and say, well, LeBron just traveled. Can we give him some? I mean, you can't call in any other sport and affect the rules, but in golf they could. And USGA put that in the wording a little bit too.
Right. Interesting now, in 2019, Zinger would be okay with moving that rock because you're in that penalty area, but you can do that. We'll see.
He'll be ready for a comeback.
First, we're also going to hear from a lot of the viewers on what they think about these rules as we send it back over to Lauren Thompson.
Yeah, well, the viewers themselves, that's an important part of this process for the USGA and the RNA, as these are not set in stone yet. Common sense, simplifying the game, growing the game is one of the reasons for Golfers Network. They sent this in. They said touching an area nowhere near the ball does not give an advantage, should never have been a penalty in the first place. Excellent change. Let's get to another opinion. as Mike Bateman sent in penalty areas, too many loose impediments as these areas are not maintained. This will slow down play and argue what is loose. I like that take. Interesting stuff. We want varied opinions on this. Ben Jeffcoat said, I like it, but while we're at it, how about grounding the club in a bunker too? And he said in his hashtag, this says quite a bit, as these often do, spend a lot of time at the beach, not the good kind. Ben, you're definitely not alone. Keep these opinions coming our way, as opinions are a part of this entire revisions process. It is 6 months that has started off for the RNA and the USGA. You've got to send in your feedback at rna.org, also usga.org. They're used to getting about 10,000 responses from you year in, year out. So this is nothing strange to them. Also, that hashtag that drives everything on social media, Golf Rules 2014. Sakara, people need to hit the ground running with these opinions.
Yes, please. We want to know what you think. But coming up in today's show, we have a story you might not believe. Yet stay tuned to find out what role this week's PGA Tour venue at Innisbrook played in one of the biggest undercover sting operations in U.S. history. But first, Inbee Park will join us live next to react to what was her 18th career win this past weekend in Singapore in only her second start back since a 6-month layoff with injury. Hear from the 7-time major champion after this.